Live.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to General Council for April 22nd, 2025. Let's go to number one, the attendance roll call. Start with Amos. Go ahead, Amos.
Amos Key Jr., Scano.
Kerry Bombury, Councillor, present.
Audrey Paulus-Bombury, elected council.
Can you turn it on?
Audrey Paulus-Bombury, elected council, here.
Dale Bombury, Councillor.
Dean Hill, Councillor.
Greg Fraser, Councillor.
Hazel Johnson, councillor.
Melba Thomas, councillor.
Elena Van Every, Councillor.
Cynthia Jameson, councillor.
And Helen Miller is off sick today, and Leslie Green is off on bereavement. So before we get started, let us take a moment of silence to honor the community members who we have recently lost. Let's take a moment. Thank you. Let's go to number 4, adoptions of the agenda. I just want to change on number 5.2. We'll put that at the bottom after number 7. She'll be coming in late tonight. Oh, I was making it. We don't need to change now. We're all good. Okay. Any other additions? If not, can I have a mover to accept the agenda? Moved by Audrey, second by Melba. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none? Carried. Well, before we get started with our delegation, happy Earth Day. And we have Laurel Curley here that's going to give us an update on illegal dumping. Can you just push the button to talk? There you go, so they can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty good. No offense, but the ones at the community hall, you have to like talk right into it, like kiss it, you know? So I did a write-up on the community members meeting that we had on March 30th. And I should probably start by saying it was supposed to, my intent was just to do that community members meeting to help get some information for, anybody who's interested. It ended up kind of evolving into basically a primary research project. It's a little one. So these could be seen as research findings based on input from the community. So
I'll get Linda. Can you pass those out for her?
there's some extras there for community members. I don't know. There are some people here that were involved in the whole thing. So, I don't know exactly what you want me to do.
Just give us how the community event went and where things are at.
Okay. The community members meeting, it went really, really well. We had about 40 or 50 people out. And of course, I forgot to do a head count. But we were set up for 50 people. And I think there were 2 or 3, maybe 4 chairs that didn't have someone sitting in them. So, but if we count the children of one of the community members, we hit 50 people. So anyway, it went really well. The background on in this document, it's a 4-pager. I had hoped to make it 2 pages, but there was a lot of information that came in. And as it turns out, contamination doesn't just involve soil. So I don't know if you want to take a few minutes to read through.
Is there anything that you would like to highlight for us?
Well, just really briefly, the first page is the background of, how things came to be, what happened, and basically the background. Page 2 and 3 are the issues and concerns that have been brought up, but that were discussed, either brought up in meetings, in the community members meeting, There were a number of small group meetings that happened. I've also gotten texts and emails and phone calls from community members who, wanted to make comments or suggestions or have some help bring up some discussion in the community about how to address these issues. So, and then the last page, page 4, is the suggestions and recommendations that came out of this minor informal, I will stress informal, primary research. So, one of the things that I think is really important is that it's become very clear that contamination involves many different aspects. There are a lot of factors involved. And when you look at environment, that pretty much encompasses our world, right? So people are concerned with not only soil contamination, but also air, water, and food contamination. And some are quite passionate about these things. Again, the community meeting went really well. We didn't have any instances of hostility or aggression. And it went a bit longer than we had originally thought it would. We allowed for 3 hours. It went for almost 4. But people seemed happy and satisfied with how things were done and what was accomplished during that time. And then there was, Amos is here. Amos suggested at the meeting that we do a radio show, which we did do. We were going to do it on the 9th, I think it was, but then it was rescheduled to the 16th. So, and then, do you want me to put a plug now? And then, because of tonight's meeting, and also because at the phone and radio show on the 16th, we weren't able to get to all of the calls. So we only had an hour. And so we're going to do a part 2 to that, a second segment to, one, talk about these research findings, and to allow more time for people to call in. Because a lot of times people are more comfortable over the phone than they are in person. So you get more information that way. So
Greg, go ahead.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, also thank you, Laurel, for all the work you're doing to organize this, make sure the community is aware of this issue. One of the questions I had is, did you get any feedback about the acceptance of someone like a bylaw officer or someone that would be respected by the community, and they'd be able to enforce some of the laws or bylaws that would be put in place?
well, actually, it wasn't actually a bylaw officer that was considered and discussed. It was more in terms specifically of a bylaw, and the ability for a bylaw to authorize our police to be more involved and to respond more appropriately, especially when there are situations of aggression and hostility. Some of our community members were assaulted, some were threatened. There were death threats uttered by people trying to bring materials in. But as soon as the police showed up, then that aggressiveness just dissipated. And the in one instance where like we've had 2, 3, I believe at least 4 of our older men assaulted, physically assaulted. We've had a number of our women threatened with violence or, basically really stupid stuff like they're going to burn your house down, or, good thing you'll be asleep, and, just stupid stuff like that. I think one of the recommendations is that there be more research done, research and development, because this is a really huge issue. When I got involved, I thought it was just about, some dump trucks coming in and blocking my laneway, and, that's what got me involved. But when I look at, when I was writing this up, I thought, oh my gosh, this affects so many aspects of life. Some people are really concerned about the potential, like they've recently purchased, like have done land transfers and have come to realize that there was something dumped, some materials. One lady talked about she's had the land for 5 or 7 years, and she's still digging through old shingles through a like under the grass. There were all these shingles, and she wants to build a home and raise her family there. And so one of the concerns is the potential for people, and it actually is one of the recommendations that um, when a land transfer occurs, and so many of the various departments would be involved. When a land transfer occurs, or a person makes a purchase of land, that one, there's an agreement, a community responsibility agreement, that they will not bring in any contaminated materials, that they will follow all of the protocols through the Environment Office and make sure that all of those tests are done and the results are in and the approvals are received. And also that, now I lost my train of thought. When the land transfers happen, that there be a database available, because at this time there's no way of knowing what's been done on the land before you take possession of it. And so young people wanting to raise their family or have a garden, finding out that there's benzene in the soil, so that cancels the whole gardening idea. And having your kids playing outside, because our kids are the ones closest to the ground, right? So they're affected more strongly than those of us who are up a little higher, like our respiratory issues. So health concerns there, and like I said, it touches on so many different areas of life. Public health, safety, our roads department would need to be involved. I did get all of the comments that were made and suggestions. I did get them in here, but I had to really speak in more general terms. I didn't have time or the energy. It's a rather huge undertaking to focus specifically on individual comments or concerns. Things were kind of grouped more generally into what they can be looked at from the various levels: policy, procedure, practice, internal, external. Um, with regard to a bylaw, having one of the things that was I tried to stress with community members, was the import of our police to be able to, one, lay criminal charges where criminal activities are occurring. For example, if someone is uttering death threats, that's a criminal offense under the criminal code, as is physical assault. Um, there are different things that our police right now don't. It doesn't seem like there's that umbrella coverage for them to be able to respond to things, which is unfortunate, because then community members are in a situation, are being put in a situation where they could be seriously harmed.
Yeah,
ahead,
that's sort of
Paul.
where I was going, is that you'd think that the community would have more confidence if the bylaw was enforced by police.
I believe so.
Okay.
I know that a number of people were really made comments to me and thanked me for having the police presence at the community members meeting. And in the preparation time, I kept saying, I want to have the cops there. I want to have the cops there. And people were like, why do we need the cops there? Rah, rah, rah. Well, right? So, but then we have the meeting. Everyone felt safe. People were able to talk and discuss without being concerned about having to deal with any forms of retaliation for their comments or their questions, or, the things that they were saying. And there were no instances at all of aggression or hostility, which is, kind of unique. So,
Go ahead, Audrey.
There you go.
there you go. Can
I
I
just
just, Audrey, just before, Greg, did I answer your question? Okay.
Yes, you
I
did.
just-
Thank you.
Sorry, I kind of ramble sometimes. Sorry, Audrey.
Well, that's okay. My
You know
question
me.
was, did anyone address the fact of the shape of our roads?
Yes.
How eroded they are and how many potholes there are in there, and it caused in big, by the big trucks coming in, and the number of them that have come in and destroyed our paved roads.
Yep.
Did they discuss any solutions to it, like levying tolls to it for these trucks, et cetera?
Well, actually, the issue of the road, that's one of the things, and I'm trying to remember which paragraph it's in. It is in here about the roads. Um, page 2, bottom paragraph, concern was also voiced with regard to the physical effects of heavy vehicle traffic on our roads. The prevalence of potholes and high traffic rough patches not only pose a safety hazard for community members, but can also result in damage to our own and others' vehicles. One of the things that was talked about, and I didn't put it in here because I wasn't exactly sure, well, I didn't have enough time or space. One of the things that was suggested was that signage be posted for, because my understanding, and I believe it's accurate, is that the roads department, there is a half load, because at the community members meeting, they provided a poster of a half load period, like in the spring when the roads are susceptible to damage. One of the things that was suggested was that be somehow made as signs, to have signage at each of the entry points saying that during this time, from this day to this day, you can only bring in half loads. So that was one suggestion. I wasn't sure if that happens yet or not. I know that the flyers were available, but I don't know if the signage. My understanding was that there is supposed to be signage or notification or something, so that the trucking people know that they can only bring in half loads. I don't know if it's done or not. Again, more research.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, Public Works usually puts out a notice prior to it and has a time frame. And I know before they used to put it in the newspapers, but with a lot of the social media, I'm assuming that's where they're placing it now, that it does exist from, I forget the time period now. I know it's usually in spring break when the thawing happens and the roads get soft. So I'm not sure where they place it now, but I know they've been using the social media a lot more. But I think that's an excellent idea, putting it in on all the entry points onto the reserve.
Yeah,
That way it'd be clearly defined on the time frame.
yeah, and it would also make it so that any vehicles coming in would know that they have to have, that there's a load restriction in place. So, but I think maybe a bylaw could help with that. I don't know. I don't know much about bylaws.
Go ahead.
We could add to the bylaw to state that if they violate the half load season, then yeah, maybe fines or something that can be imposed.
Well, and one of the things that was talked about quite a bit in discussion at various points in the discussions was the potential for restitution. Specifically in terms of contamination, one of the concerns was, yeah, okay, so they have to have the corporate insurance coverage, and the landowner is, according to the protocols, is supposed to have homeowner or whatever kind of insurance they would have, um, to deal with damages or with specifically with regard to the trucks with and the landowner with, what do you call it, environmental and infrastructure damage, to cover that. The difficulty there is that insurance usually only allows for cash compensation, monetary compensation for damages and liability. Community members' concern is, what about the cleanup? What about restoring whatever's damaged? What about, like, why do we have to keep paying for our roads to be fixed when it's not necessarily our fault that they're in the condition they're in? And then that extends also to the contamination of soil, air, water, and food. Why do we have to cover the costs of the replenishing, and getting our waterways clean and our soil cleaned? Um, so, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other things we gotta be mindful of too is, yeah, there's all that illegal dumping, which is, I guess, predicated on based our own community members doing that. But the other issue is we have people who have businesses that actually live here, such as people who haul water. So I guess we have to look at how that's gonna impact those individuals as well, who are community members and have a business by, say, transporting the water on. So whether they start delivering half loads and the cost impact to them, I guess. So I think that's an additional thing that has to be considered for the community members.
Go ahead, Hazel.
Yes, I was just going to ask if there's a location over at Third Line and Tuscarora Road where there was a large dumping of, I guess it's hand sanitizers that were after the COVID,
Oh, geez.
right in front of, it's near the road, and it's quite a large dumping. And what reminded me to ask that tonight was the fact that my grandchildren live up that road and I had to take them home. And I thought to myself, this council has asked that person to clean that up. There's a smell there, and it's just all, it's still there the way that it was dumped there over 2 years ago. And in the atmosphere, you can smell that all the time.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the things that can be considered from a policy perspective is to look at the potential for there to be, please pardon the use of the word, tariffs placed on community members. If you look at the, because business industrial waste was one of the concerns, a major concern identified in internal community industrial waste. Um, Specifically lagoons and them leaching into, the surrounding area and the waterways. And so I'm, I'm trying to remember which paragraph it is. I know in on the last page, the bottom paragraph, I tried to be very careful how I worded everything in here. But in terms of having the community responsibility agreement for individuals and businesses, identifying, and see, that would need to be researched and developed. But a responsibility agreement saying that if you won't do any contamination. If any contamination occurs, then you will be responsible not only for cleaning it up, but for restoring or replenishing the area to its original state or better, preferably better. Um, and that there will be rather severe consequences for noncompliance. Some of our community members are quite strict in their thinking, so I'll just let you read it because I don't really want to say it.
Go ahead,
It's
Amos.
pretty strong.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laurel. I think council, we need to know that whatever legislation that we craft and draft has to have, more than being responsible, it's got to be prosecutional. They got to know they can be prosecuted. People who go outside of that circle who are damaging our properties. I think that's what it's got to be. I'm talking tough love, talking legislation with teeth instead of just getting a slap on our wrists.
Well, and
We don't have much more land here, and we got to take care of it. So I'm glad the staff has been recommending that whatever we come up with has teeth and can go into the courts. You can be prosecuted now, and I love that. Tough love. We live here, and that's what we said on the air last week. Tough love. We all live together here. We got to be responsible for your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. And the ATR is not doing any favors to us. So we got to make sure what we have left is taken care of, and we're able to prosecute on that, on any kind of law that we create or legislation that we create with this government. We got to be able to say that and tell our people, And I think we said that a number of times. Well, I did a number of times. It was my show, so. But and part 2 is tomorrow night at 8:00. You want to tune in? We're going to be on the air again with part 2 of the dumping, and we have a great theme song. We have Jaws. The Jaws theme song is our theme song. Dun 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 dun. So we got to have teeth. We got to get teeth with any kind of piece of legislation that this government creates. You got to be able to prosecute.
that was
Time has
actually
come.
that was actually one of the suggestions, I guess, or recommendations that community members had, was that people do things because they can get away with it, and they know they can get away with it. And so after having one or two or however many instances where people don't get away with it, for example, uttering threats against someone's life, that's a criminal offense under the criminal code, punishable by law. And, people can do time for that. but that people, once people realize that this isn't something to just laugh off, or, oh, it's my land, I can do whatever I want. Well, first off, it's not your land, you don't own it, you only have a certificate of possession. And if you mess around and you don't look after the coming generations, which is the concern of community members, then you will no longer have that certificate of possession. It will be rescinded and your band membership will be canceled, period. So having something like that in place where it is enforceable, and in cases where it's criminal offenses, that it's punishable by law. So when people go outside of our own understandings, then maybe being responsible to those other ways of understanding things, that is punitive measures, will make a difference. So once people realize that it's going to be up to them to clean up the mess, and not only the mess that they've done on their own space, but also the mess that has leached into other spaces, I think it'll be a great deterrent, and a prevent, like, not at this moment, at this point in time, it's more of a remediation, but in the future, it would be a preventative measure. Because when people realize that, bringing in benzene or hand sanitizer in BPA containers, that, it needs to be cleaned up. So
So only have a couple more minutes. Go ahead, Amos, then Dale.
Yeah, I think one of our comments that we made to the community on the radio show was that Six Nations is not a dump, and we frown on anyone accepting concrete and rebar, because that's what's happening in some of the places. Concrete and rebar, that's a dump. That makes your property a dump. So we got to make sure they understand the different levels of acceptance, or what soils we will accept, right? Agriculture, commercial, industrial, whatever the levels are.
Dale, last question.
Yeah, no, I think it's good we create something here for Six Nations, but, looking at all the, item number 5 with all the candidates here, maybe that's something we can look at with legislation as well for off reserve, because that's where it's coming from, off reserve. So we look at how we can, increasing the laws there within the province to make it, I guess, more penalties, fines for truck drivers, everybody who's connected with the waste that where it's coming from. So I mean that's another avenue that we can pursue as well.
one of the things I would like to mention, prior to the community members meeting, we developed, I worked with a small planning committee, and we developed an information package that has in it a community action process. In that community action process, which has 4 steps to it, take pictures. Step 1, take pictures. Step 2, call the cops. Step 3, text the pictures to our environment office so that it can be sent to MECP and MTO. And then step 4, call the spills action line, spills action center, and they can handle things off reserve. So that's great, but we need to also take an internal approach in terms of industry and businesses and individuals within the community who are allowing contamination to occur. So it kind of needs to, like it's stressed in this write-up, that we need a comprehensive approach, and we need to look at many various factors, angles, aspects, because it affects so much. People can't eat their food from their gardens. Kids are getting sick. If we look at the public health and the cancer clusters, and the relationship of those spaces to toxic dumping within that vicinity, it's kind of scary, really scary. So if there aren't any other questions.
No, one more.
Thanks, Laurel, for bringing the community together and certainly talking about the health and safety and well-being of people. Yeah, we have a case right now, and the gentleman is calling me again, and this council is aware of the garbage of a neighbor that is strewn across his property, especially when the wind is pretty high, and we've had some wind lately. So I didn't get an answer as to how does that work, Is it the landowner that's responsible, or is it the tenant because what happened is a landowner, and then the tenant was there, a son, and he moved and left 8 to 10 garbage bags in the yard, and of course the dog and the wind certainly strew it all over. So I don't know if Public Works has ever dealt with this before, something like this, who is responsible? So I'm sure, I see on page 4, you've sort of alluded to some of those concerns that community people have. But this is specific, and just before I came in here, I tried to get in touch with him because he called me, but he's not available. I wanted to know, was it resolved? Was his yard cleaned up? And I don't know the answer.
Um, just off to the side, one of the things that I've considered in terms of dealing with things like that, because when you drive down the roads, it's just heartbreaking to see what our land looks like. And one of the things that popped in my head as a policy analyst was, and a social worker, um, we have a lot of people who are in schools that are required to do 40 hours of community service in order to graduate. 40 hours of, we'd have to provide steel-toed boots and have supervision, things like that, but it could be a community undertaking to help clean up our public lands, like the ditches and the roadways, people's laneways, elderly people who can't clean their own yards. There are a lot of people, and we have a lot of young people in school. So why not access that? We have people that are on social assistance that are able-bodied. Why not access that human resource and utilize the resources that we have available to us, human and otherwise, to help address situations like that? Because I know with myself, I have difficulty with bending. So I ended up buying a bunch of those sticks, you squeeze them and you can pick stuff up. But I still pay youngsters to come and clean up my yard and clean up my ditch. So anyway, I hope I've answered everyone's questions. And just to reiterate, Amos, we do have a phone-in radio show tomorrow night that will have more time allocated for calls. So hopefully, oh, and then the other thing I wanted to mention is if you live in the community, you should have got one of those information packages in your mailbox. If you didn't, please let me know because I'll find out whose route it was on and why didn't you get one? Because, it's called a mailbox blitz for a reason. So
Okay.
is that it?
Yeah. So
Okay.
thank you for coming in and sharing
Okay.
tonight.
I would also like to thank the band and the involved agencies, especially the Environment Office was amazing, and the senior manager recently in place was just awesome. Again tonight because I couldn't figure out how to make this come out on my computer. I would also like to thank the police service for their help in keeping things calm and peaceful. Calm and peaceful is good.
Okay.
So
Thank
now
you.
yeah.
Okay, can I have a mover to accept the illegal dumping update as information? Moved by Amos, second by Audrey. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Okay, let's get started. Our local candidates for federal election 2025. So I did move somebody, Joy, sorry, because I didn't think you were coming on time. Is that okay? Yes. Okay. So I have Conservative Party of Canada candidate Larry Brock that will come up. So you'll have 5 minutes to talk about your platform, and then up to 10 minutes just for questions. And since it's gonna take a bit, no follow-up questions, council, unless there's no other questions, just so we can get through. So you have 5 minutes and then up to 10 for council to ask questions for you. Okay, go ahead.
Chief Hill, councilors, administration staff, Sego, Scano, thank you so much for your kind invitation to not only myself, but my competitors, to give you an opportunity of learning more about our platforms and to answer our questions. I am honored and privileged to have been part of your community professionally for close to 25 years. Almost 20 years as your Crown Attorney and 4.5 years, roughly 4.5 years, as your Member of Parliament. In that time frame, I have addressed a myriad of issues And I've always taken the approach not to be reactionary, but also to take the approach of looking for creative solutions. I've worked in tandem with many professionals in your community. I've worked in tandem with Chief Hill and her staff to address a number of issues. What you want to see here is not more lip service, not more Ottawa knows best. You've often heard politicians talking about building a nation-to-nation relationship. Well, what does that mean? It often is said during election campaigns, but I want to see action. I don't want to see words. You've had enough of promises for the last 10 years, and I might dare say even longer than 10 years. You need a federal government that listens to you, does not dictate to you, works in partnership with you. You want a federal government that prioritizes the needs of this community, and I'm going to address those needs. You want a federal government that doesn't view potable water as a privilege, but as a natural right. It is disgusting that this community, the largest by population, First Nation community in this great country of ours, has potable water issues, contaminated wells, a water treatment system that does not serve the entire community. It's a sad statement that for over 10 years, the current federal government made a promise to end all water boil advisories. And here we are with still a substantial number left. It is disgusting that you had a federal government that actually thanked a First Nation member from the Grassy Narrows Reserve who attended a Liberal fundraiser almost 10 years ago to be laughed at, to be mocked at. That community needs services. If this were a situation in downtown Ottawa, the potable water issue would be resolved within days. You've waited long enough. You need a federal government that addresses the housing gap that exists in your community. We need shovels in the ground. We need to speed up all the approval processes to streamline the bureaucracy to ensure that housing is met. Again, housing is not a privilege, it is an absolute right. You need a federal government that prioritizes education. You have education gaps within this community. I've been a proud proponent of your immersion school. I have advocated for funding at numerous levels within the federal government.
You have 1 minute.
Oh, I'm running out of time. You need a federal government that prioritizes the completion of the Truth and Reconciliation Report. 14 of 94 recommendations being made. You need a federal government that puts you first. And that's where the Conservative Party of Canada is not about talk, it is about action to ensure that you are the masters, you are in control of your destiny, and we provide the necessary services. The fact that we have issues with the Jordan's Principle and the funding that goes with that, the essential services, that is a travesty. That needs to be addressed. We need to also address your First Nations policing issue. We need to make that a priority. They need to be deemed an essential service. We need to ensure that your firefighting services have the most up-to-date safety equipment. Right now, the equipment that your firefighters are using and non-Indigenous firefighters are causing cancer. There is a gold standard in Europe. We need to ensure that equipment is here to keep not only
is there
those
any-
professionals safe, but to keep your community safe.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Amos.
More of a comment, but it might turn into a question. I'm really concerned, it's probably with all the people, who are the candidates as well, probably the same question I'm going to ask. Will your government assure us, First Nations in Canada, that they will not use the notwithstanding clause dealing with First Nations in Canada?
The only use in this particular federal campaign about the use of the notwithstanding clause had to do everything with criminal justice reform and some of the decisions that came out of the Supreme Court of Canada that allowed mass murderers to only be afforded a 25-year life sentence before they're eligible for parole. That is the only use of the phrase notwithstanding clause. Our party is not going to use notwithstanding clause in relation to any Indigenous or First Nation issue.
Okay, will you help us then if Ford decides to do that with the Ring of Fire? If his negotiations are falling apart with all the First Nations around the Ring of Fire, that he will not invoke the notwithstanding clause and harm us.
I can't speak on behalf of the provincial government, Councillor, okay? I don't know what direction Doug Ford is taking. On the Ring of Fire issue, our party is very, very clear on that. We need to develop that immediately to ensure the infrastructure is designed to put the equipment there, to put the workers there, to get the shovels in the ground. We want to move very quickly to harness those resources.
And to accommodate First Nations.
Absolutely.
Okay, Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. One question I had is about what we consider treaty obligations when it comes to funding, providing the services that we need here on the reserve, whether it is healthcare, education, housing, as you said such. Is the federal government, are they amenable to helping us open doors for own source revenue? Because own source revenue is very important because, as you know, there's huge gaps at the federal level in terms of providing the adequate funding that's required.
Yes. And Councillor, you may recall my previous discussions with former Councillor Chief Hill, Mark Hill, in relation to that very issue and with respect to some of the industry that you have here on the territory about taking a percentage of the excise taxes and allowing that to remain on the territory. Chief Mark Hill was very adamant in striving, not only to me, but in his discussions in my presence, in the presence of Pierre Poilievre and the executive team, that if that were to ever see reality, that he very proudly stated that this Six Nations of the Grand River would not need one further federal dollar. There is an opportunity there that surely needs to be examined and moved forward.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Alina.
Thank you for coming and being here. You mentioned nation to nation relationships and streamlined bureaucracy. I wonder if you are aware of the amount of bureaucracy. Our health department alone has to provide 400 reports per year. That's more than one a day. A lot of that money is spent on administration when it could be spent on helping people.
Yes.
How do you see helping that situation, and is part of that just a transfer from Treasury?
Well, the entire philosophy of the Conservative Party platform is smaller government, stronger citizens, stronger communities. And that starts with streamlining the huge bureaucracy that we have at the federal level. I didn't know that statistic until you shared that with me. The federal government in the last 10 years increased the size of the federal public service by 43%. I don't think anyone here in this council chamber can safely state that your lives and your services and your interactions with the federal government have improved by 43%. I've got my staff here in my constituency office. They are still doing the work of the federal public service in terms of processing passport applications, immigration issues, things like that that are not being addressed. So we are looking at creating efficiencies, and efficiencies means reducing the number of regulations, reducing the number of paperwork that needs to be filed. Healthcare is a serious growing issue, not only in your community, but right across this country. It is no small wonder we have a healthcare crisis when we are spending $10 billion more to service our $1.4 trillion debt than we are transferring to provinces for healthcare. So we get a handle on our debt, We reduce the size of the bureaucracy, we reduce the size of the regulation behind that, we can see efficiencies right across that board, and that means healthcare on the Six Nations.
Hazel?
Um, You mentioned about Mark Hill's comment about if the federal government allowed Six Nations to retain the excise tax, and mentioned that we would not need another cent from the government. But that's kind of far-fetched because the government has their fiduciary responsibility to this First Nation. So if the excise tax gets to stay here, that's extra for us, but they still have to maintain the fiduciary responsibility.
I couldn't agree with you more. It doesn't mean that they have to completely abandon
That's
their
right.
responsibilities. I think Chief Mark Hill was looking long-term and really enhancing the economic viability of this community.
Mhm.
And we're talking about Grand River Enterprises here, the
Yeah,
largest employer-based industry on your territory. And I forget the actual total number of excise taxes that they pay on an annual basis, but I know Chief Hill was talking about a small percentage,
350 million.
350 million, a small percentage of that being withheld and being allowed to be dispersed as council sees fit. I think that was the grand sort of vision, but I don't think there was any discussion, even with the leader, Pierre Poilievre, any discussion that this would give you a free pass not to continue with your legal obligations.
Right? Yep.
Good
Thanks.
point.
Okay, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Nawe.
Okay, next we have the Liberal Party of Canada candidate, Joy O'Donnell. So again, 5 minutes, your platform.
I do have copies for people. Is that okay?
Sure. We'll get, Linda can pass them out for you. And then I'll stop you at 5 minutes and then we'll ask questions. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Sego and Scano. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Joy O'Donnell and I'm the Liberal Mark Carney candidate for the Brantford, Brant South Six Nations riding. It's a pleasure to be here again. I have presented to council on a number of occasions. I recognize Malva. Years ago, I was here when Chief Bill Montour, as a duty to consult through the Grand River Conservation Authority, or the foundation. I was a member of the foundation. And I was back again with Paul General, working with Chief Ava Hill and the council then, regarding Mohawk Lake and the Grand Trails and the development that we've put together from following the Grand River, the trail system from Dundalk, Ontario, all the way down to Port Maitland, and working with Connie Jameson and a number of other people to promote the tourism at Chiefswood with the glamping and promoting tourism for Six Nations as well as throughout the Grand Watershed Trail, or the whole watershed. So it's a pleasure to be back. I have shared with you the Liberal Party platform for 2025, a summarized, broken down version as how it relates to Six Nations. I will kind of give you a little bit of my background. I have been in business as a certified financial planner for the last 30 years, 20 years operating my own company in Brantford, Grand Financial Planning, and doing a number of volunteer works. I've been a Rotarian for 25 years, and also, as I mentioned, Mohawk Lake work, Grand Trails work, and just general working with the community in general. And I'm putting my name forward because I believe Mark Carney is the right man at the right time in the right place. Mark Carney is knowledgeable. He's got the brains and he's got the guts to stand up to Mr. Trump as we face the tariffs and the trade issues that we've got coming at us, and it's going to cause some chaos for our economy, and we need to unite and be strong together. And I would like to represent our riding and make sure that as Mr. Carney builds out the G7 economy, the strongest economy in the G7, I believe that our riding has the ability to participate in that growth. And we should be there to get our slice of the pie. I want to make sure we are when he develops those trade deals in Europe, whether it's UK or France or wherever it may be, that Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations gets a piece of that pie. So definitely as we grow our economy, there will be more revenue in order to generate more services. And that's how we need to go forward and strengthen our economy so Mr. Trump can't wreck it or buy it or take it away from us. It's coming down to a critical election. It's a historic election, and we need all of our partners and allies to be with us and strengthen our relationship so we can stand together and stand strong against what's south of the border. In terms of Liberal platform and where we are with what we're looking at with Six Nations, Mark Carney has stated clearly he believes in full partnership with First Nations and the support of Indigenous-led processes for advancing self-determination and exercising a jurisdiction in priority areas such as education, health, child and family services, as well as community safety and policing. And we have to work together, but also recognize that Six Nations, it is a nation-to-nation discussion. And as your member of parliament, I'm here to listen to you and to take your words, your needs, your concerns to Ottawa so we can address them and work together in order to resolve any of those outlying issues that are, been around for a while. I grew up in Caledonia. I went to high school in Caledonia. I know a number of people, Six Nations.
Okay, 5 minutes is
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry. Wow, that went fast.
Yeah. Okay, Audrey, do you have a question? Then Amos?
Welcome. I guess, well, you answered my one question already was with what are you going to do with Trump? Okay, and the tariffs that affect Six Nations as well. And what about working with a border crossing? A lot of our people are having difficulty getting across the border, and we have lots of people over in the United States now.
Yes.
So some of them are scared to even leave the United States for fear of not getting back into the country. Do you have any, I guess, influence there?
Well, not yet, but if you all do, no, if you all vote for me, no.
Not you, your party.
At the party. I've come to Six Nations and I've met with a few people just to kind of get myself familiar with the issues, and that was a big one that came up not just for Six Nations but also for Mississaugas of the Credit. And there is a concern with people, even children being born in the United States and then wanting to come back to Canada, and the issues with your citizenship or however they're defining it in the United States and saying, that you're not Canadian, you can't come back home. That's not right. And I know that there's a commission table or a committee table that have been working on this already. They seem to be at least at the table and getting through some of the issues. But as a member of parliament, I would for sure be there to work with you and represent that position any way I can, for sure.
Thank you.
Amos?
So to be fair to Larry, I'm going to ask you the question about the notwithstanding.
Yeah.
Should any of the parties get in and they start wearing a crown, would the Liberals, would you stand up and not allow that government to invoke the notwithstanding clause in their dealing with First Nations in Canada?
Absolutely. In terms of notwithstanding clause, we have to be very careful when we talk about notwithstanding clause. As Mark Carney said, it's not where we start using it, it's where we finish using it. And although, earlier it was said that it was only referencing crime in this election, the problem is after the election's over and Pierre Poilievre is in power, how many more times will he decide to use the notwithstanding clause when it suits him? And this is the problem. It's a slippery slope. It is meant to be used in a very rare occasion when necessary, not just for frivolous things. And in terms of crime even, we have a repeat offenders declaration or rule of law that if you are a repeat offender and you're dangerous to the community, you're not allowed out. So what do we need to use the notwithstanding clause? That notwithstanding clause is something very specific and we should be very careful because it takes away the rights that we are granted through our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We don't want a government that uses a notwithstanding clause higgly-piggly anytime they want to get their way. Sorry, I can't do it.
Especially a follow-up, Chief, just especially on land claims.
Exactly.
That's where it could be very invoked. It could be invoked to neutralize the whole process.
Well, and especially if you look at some of the past comments made by Pierre Poilievre, he proudly voted against the UN Declaration of Rights on Indigenous Peoples Act. I mean, you've got to be concerned when somebody that has that history threatens to use the notwithstanding clause at any point in time, let alone when we're dealing with issues that need to be negotiated nation to nation and not just determined that you can shut down that discussion whenever you want.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you for coming in today. Yeah, there's a couple things I just noticed on your sheet there, which is a little bit of a sore spot here in our community about Métis funding. But I don't want to get into that because we do not support Bill C-53.
I'm aware of that as well.
My question is to follow up on Councillor Amos's comments about land claims. We have the largest fiduciary land claim case probably in Canadian history coming to court. We've been at it for 30 years. It's got to do with the loss of land, misappropriation of land, and funds that were supposed to go with that. And where we were reduced in the Haldeman tract from 950,000 acres down to 46,000 acres.
Mm-hmm.
We've been having trouble getting a judge. You know, the only defense the Crowns have is delay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you encourage that the federal government get either a judge or start the negotiation process with Six Nations of the Grand River?
Yes, absolutely. For sure, we need, whether the solution comes from a judge or a court of law, or it is a negotiated settlement from nation to nation, either way, we have to move it forward. And we have to have free discussion and not just free discussion, but constant communication, not start and stop, start and stop. It needs to be regular. And as a member of parliament representing Six Nations, I'm here to represent you and your voices. And when you come to me and ask me those questions, I would be at the table in Ottawa representing this community and making sure that this community either gets a judge and gets through this court case that's been sitting around since 1995 and gets this done. So Six Nations, Brantford and Brant South, all of our communities can go forward and grow together. That's what we really need. And we need to, unite and be strong and fight in Ottawa.
Okay, thank you. That's been 10 minutes.
Okay.
And thank you for coming. You can go to the next one. They just got 10 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So number 4, we have new Democratic Party candidate, Ann Kajerski Colley.
Excellent.
Did I say it right? Oh, good.
People usually get the first part wrong.
So again, 5 minutes and up to 10 for questions.
Thank you.
Okay? Go ahead.
Well, good evening, Chief Hill, band councillors, land residents. I wish to thank you, first of all, for inviting us all here to meet with you on this Earth Day and have the opportunity to share our party's platforms for this federal election. My name is Ann Kajerski-Colley. I'm the NDP candidate for Brantford, Brant South, and Six Nations. I've been a New Democrat all my life as I grew up in Winnipeg, and I had an NDP government as a child. We had pharmacare, something New Democrats have fought for in our parliament and secured only recently at a national level, which we had in Manitoba 50 years ago. I believe, as all New Democrats, that without good health, we have little. Good, robust health is critical for a happy and a fulfilling life, and it matters for good mental health. So when you're depressed, anxious, and feel little energy to fight for life, humans are vulnerable to giving up on their lives. So without good health and access to the health care one needs, what in life is worth fighting for? When other parties talk about tax cuts, underneath all of that is the willingness, maybe even the eagerness, to deprive you of the health care that you need to get better. Mark Carney's platform includes no funding, no expansion, and no commitment to deliver universal pharmacare, as Manitobans have enjoyed for 55 years and will continue under Wab Kinew's leadership. New Democrats have fought to achieve this for Canadians, and if a Liberal or Conservative majority government is elected, you will see access to publicly funded pharmacare and healthcare limited or cut out from underneath you. And this is why it is so important that New Democrats be elected to Parliament. In a parliament of over 300 seats, 24 New Democrats got this country a pharmacare program that assists diabetics and access to contraception, and we need to improve this. I think of young people who are really struggling with mental health challenges. They may be underemployed, unemployed, under or not insured at all for medications that make all the difference in their desire to even live. The Liberals have not, nor will not, provide that for people who are in desperate need of access to life-saving meds unless they are compelled to by the presence of New Democrats in the House of Commons. A banker prime minister is more concerned with interest rates, debt to GDP ratios, and tax cuts that will insulate middle and wealthier incomed people. And you know who I mean. Those that can afford to buy mutual funds, not those who are working 2 or 3 jobs to put a roof over their head and can barely afford their groceries because they've been left behind. And if you don't have money in the stock market or in bonds, you don't matter to them. The tariffs are looming over us, and the Liberals and the Conservatives, as they talk about tax cuts, are really telling you that they will not invest in a safety net that will protect you and your family from the vicissitudes of Trump's administration. And if you're talking about tax cuts, they're promising you that you will have a harder time accessing employment insurance or access to the mental health supports that you will need in those situations. Tax cuts always hurt those who need public services, not those wealthy enough to pay privately out of their assets for their needs. And people who promote tax cuts are telling you that they only care about people who have enough money to invest in the stock market or can afford to leave the country on a holiday. The history of both Liberal and Conservative governments' attention to the rights of First Nations, as you know, is one of dereliction. There are still 35 boiled water advisories promised to remove 4 years ago, and they remain. You experience that here. You experience mold in your healthcare center. You experience a government that spends millions in courtrooms and civil litigations, fighting justice for those abused in government schools. You've experienced a Liberal Prime Minister mock Indigenous people protesting decades of unsafe water on video at a party fundraiser in Ottawa while donors laughed at them. You know the Stephen Harper record in dealing with Indigenous peoples. And that is why you should vote NDP, because we have Leah Gazan, who successfully shepherded the red dress legislation through the House. I grew up in a white suburb in Winnipeg. When I was 12 years old, I became friends with someone who was a part of the 1960s school. She was Cree, and she was taken from her family and placed in the foster care of a white suburban family. And I still remember and feel my God, how she told me how her foster mom used her as an indentured servant. They took the money and they treated her like a slave. And she was instructed by this foster mom to lie to the social worker how she was treated. And when she told me this, I was shocked and I felt helpless. And I did not know what to do or what to say. I was just a kid.
Okay, that's 5 minutes. Okay, Council, go ahead, Cynthia, and then Hazel.
More of a general observation and comment versus a particular question. Of course, we've all been glued to our television sets and very well aware of what's going on in the United States and the threats. And in particular, I found it very interesting was the US threat to annex Canada. I was really smiling to myself when I heard that. And when I heard all the reaction across Canada of all the Canadians to that threat, and I smiled to myself hearing that, because I thought, well, maybe finally these politicians are beginning to get it. I don't know if they got it or not. And what I'm talking about is the taking of our resources and lands across the whole of Canada by Canadians. Without any forethought, anything. They annexed everything pretty well from us. And I was going to allude to, and Councillor Gregg did, is that whole Haldeman track to your allies. And I hear you complaining about how do they treat our allies. And again, I was smiling to myself, thinking about our history and how that seemed to be done without any thought. And right now we have these claims going on in court against the Crown, federal and provincial crowns, for the Haldeman tract. Almost 1 million acres were reduced to 5. And we have to spend our little resources we have hiring lawyers. And we went in December for pre-trial. And the Firestone, the judge there, was wanting very much for not only the lawyers, for the parties to appear, including us, but their clients. Because what they do then is try to press the clients, the crowns, us, to negotiate. And guess what? Nobody, federal or provincial, was willing to negotiate. So when I say I'm listening to the news and I have to smile to myself, it's because of our histories. So mine was more a comment to all of you.
Hazel?
My question is gonna go back, or I guess it's a question. When Joy was speaking, she talked that she was a certified financial planner. So on Facebook, most recently, there's all kinds of posts about crypto money. And Doug Ford is the one who's promoting that. There's a long statement by him, and he's sort of indicating whereby people that are in need of additional dollars can invest $350 and end up with 10 grand in no time. And I guess I've thought about it, and I was going to ask council if we could bring in somebody here to explain that to us, because it's almost like I don't have trust. But then when you see him on Facebook doing that presentation, it's makes you wonder, is this legitimate or not? Maybe you don't know anything about it. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people don't really, but I'm all for finding out, what is this about? Is it helpful? Will it help our employees who don't get paid very much if they invested and they got some crypto dollars to heighten their incomes? It's all questions. I don't know anything, and I don't know that much.
I can't comment because I don't know anything about cryptocurrencies at all. But I know my son tried it, tried investing in that, and then he lost everything. So these I presume would be high risk adventures. So.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anne. I'm not going to butcher your last name, so I'm going to call you Anne. Yeah, I had the opportunity also to work in Winnipeg and north of Portage and Maine, and I saw the amount of First Nations living on the street.
Yeah.
So I know what
Yeah.
Winnipeg is like, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
One of the
Well,
questions I had.
we dress warm. We
Well, yeah.
dress for it.
One of the things is about, we did have the opportunity to meet with Jagmeet Singh a couple of times, more than twice. Each time we asked about help towards, because he held the balance of power at one point, and he could hopefully swing the pendulum our way, but he didn't. We asked him about the excise taxes. We asked him about the increase in the non-insured health benefits, right? We asked him in terms of helping our secretariat, survivor secretariat. So do you think there is going to be a change in terms of the NDP in looking at some of the issues for First Nations?
Well, I think it's really critically important that we elect First Nations people to Parliament. I mean, you have to have stakeholders in there holding people accountable. And Leah Gazan is Winnipeg Centre. I mean, she's been able to shepherd the legislation around the red dress legislation around there. And Leila Dance is in Helmwood Transcona. She's recent to Parliament. She just, so she's another voice in there. But we need a caucus. You need an Indigenous caucus to start to move things forward with a leader. You need more than one voice. You need more than two voices. I think that would be of critical importance. And I would like to just say, I would hope we need to. I think it's important to have Indigenous voices around in our legislatures, in our Parliament, because you have gifts, you have understandings and wisdoms to offer to all of Canada. We need you there.
Amos?
Yeah, I'm going to forego the not confidence question with you. I look at the polls every night. I've watched the polls and CBC and everybody else. And I prefer a minority government because then we have two lanes to go on, the majority and the lesser party. So I would ask you, if there was an occasion again next Tuesday that there's a minority government, we don't know, would the NDP again exercise the supply and confidence agreement with the ruling government?
Well, that
Do you
would,
think?
I'd be curious to know about that. All you can do is look at your history, right? And so, I mean, the three parties, when Harper was in power, he had two minority governments, and Jack Layton was the leader at the time. There was was one point where they were going to bring down the government, and Harper prorogued, and that sort of ended that. I don't think Jagmeet would if he's the leader. He would support a conservative government. I would think that he would support a liberal government, but we have to hold the liberals to the table because they will not get good things without enormous pressure being put on them. So yeah, I strongly support getting as many New Democrats in there. And the other thing that we need to think about too is we need to be concerned. What is Carney going to negotiate away to Trump? That is precious to Canadians if he gets a majority government. That is why we need New Democrats in there to protect our assets.
Okay, Cynthia? Okay, that hits time.
Okay, thank you
thank
so
you.
very much.
Okay, let's go to Green Party of Canada candidate. Carly Sortis. You're right. She was right.
I hear everything, so all's good.
So thank you for coming in. Again, 5 minutes of your platform and then up to 10 for questions.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. And Sago, and good evening, everybody. My name's Carly Sortis, and I'm the Green Party candidate for Brantford, Brant South, Six Nations. And I'm privileged and honored to be here today to have a voice at the table and to make sure that I can share a little bit more about the Green Party. I did run in the federal election last election, and my role of being here is to continue to build trust, to listen and to understand, and to make sure that we can have more Indigenous voices and paving the way for you to be heard. Our relationship with Indigenous communities must be rooted in respect, justice, and meaningful action. I know Trump is taking a lot of oxygen in the room, but what's really important to me is making sure that as a Green MP, we are not losing sight of the domestic issues that we have here at home, which is ensuring that we respect and understand that we have removed the sovereignty from Six Nations and Indigenous communities. We cannot move forward recognizing Canada as the 51st state as a problem if we're not recognizing the problems that we have here at home. The Green Party is committed to moving beyond symbolic gestures and towards tangible steps that honor Indigenous sovereignty and promote true reconciliation. The Green Party envisions a nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous people, and I want to be clear again that my intentions here is as an ally because I stand with you, and we need to make sure that we are all holding the government accountable. And that's why I run specifically for the Green Party. We have a different way of thinking about politics. We want to make sure that we're listening to our community first and bringing that up to the table and not vice versa. We recognize Indigenous sovereignty, self-governance, and the right to free, prior, and informed consent on decisions that affect Indigenous lands and people. We will implement all 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and we must not forget that we've only implemented 2 out of 231 calls for justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. We support Indigenous-led initiatives to address the legacy of residential schools and the ongoing impact of colonization. Six Nations of the Grand River holds a unique and significant place in our region, with the Haldeman Proclamation of 1784, which promised 6 miles on either side of the Grand River, and yet today the community occupies only a fraction of this land. The ongoing legal proceedings initiated the year I was born, so 1995. I grew up with many, many friends from Six Nations when I went to school at Assumption, and I'm in this with you as an ally to recognize that this is way too long. We stand in solidarity as the Green Party of Canada with Six Nations in seeking justice and equitable compensation for the lands and resources that were promised and still have not been fulfilled. True reconciliation requires more meaningful action and less words, and that's why I continue to run for the Green Party, so I can continue to show up for you and continue to listen, and outside of the election, hold our government accountable. We also want to establish an independent commissions of investigations into the enforced disappearance of Indigenous children, as recommended by Special Interlocutor Kimberly Murray. And we also want to criminalize the denial of residential school abuse to prevent the spread of harmful narratives. We'll reform the RCMP and justice system to address systematic racism over incarceration of Indigenous peoples. And we demand clean drinking water. Canada has repeatedly failed Six Nations, and Canada helped to build water treatment plants, as we all know, has failed to connect it to the people. Here we are 12 years later, and still only a fraction of Six Nations has access to clean drinking water. And Six Nations was excluded from the Clean Water Settlement based on the technicality that they didn't reflect the reality of over 80% of the people living on Six Nations. So Bill C-61, the First Nations Clean Water Act, died on the order paper in January. So Six Nations does have the rightfully ability to sue the government of Canada, and I stand with you. Canada can do better, and we must do better without needing to be sued to do what's right. I dream alongside you, and I strive for a day where Indigenous people do not have to relive trauma to demand action from the government. The Green Party has consistently recognized access to clean drinking water as a human right, and that right must be established and protected by a legal framework. We also absolutely commit to realizing that this legislation in...
Okay, that's 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. As you know, you mentioned that you're quite familiar with the Haldeman Tract. There is what we're trying to push forward with all parties is the duty to consult and proper accommodation. We've been seen to be getting left out a lot of times, especially with environmental assessments, prior to them wanting to build. They're forgetting about the First Nations input on environmental assessments. The other thing too is the archaeological phases. Okay, phase 1 to 4, and we get included phase 3. we should be included in phase one.
Mhm.
You know, that just makes no sense. Now, is your government ready to push in that direction?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. That to me is not embodying the free, prior, and informed consent, and that's not true representation of working nation to nation. So what I'm hearing is we do need to work more alongside Indigenous communities to make sure that you're brought along again, not just on step 3, but right from the beginning. We really saw what happened at Arrowdale as well, where public consultation is not being heard, and we need to make sure that your voices are at the table. The hard part about being an MP is we are, and I hate using this word, but being a spokesperson because your voices aren't being heard. So we need to be a better spokesperson to make sure that your voices are brought alongside that table of conversation. So absolutely, Greg. Thanks for the question.
Audrey?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Mine is more of a statement, and that is that, in my opinion, we are not Indigenous. We're First Nations, Six Nations, largest by population First Nations in Canada. So we're not Métis, nor are we Inuit. So if you could remember that, and clumping us together as a federal government, we don't clump ourselves together like that. We're Ongwe, which are the original people, or we're Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse.
Yes, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
again, this information wasn't taught to us in high school, and that's why we need to continue to show up. So Audrey, I appreciate that, and I listened and I heard you, and we can always do better going forward. So thank you.
Amos?
Yeah, I wished I would have been able to ask all the same questions to everybody, but I'm going to take it a different way. One of my aspirations for Six Nations is that from whenever we've settled a litigation for lost income from 1784 on the Grand River, that going forward there'd be a new tax scheme in which we would get a minimum of a third of all taxes collected from any GST or transaction into perpetuity. The province would get a third, the feds would get a third, and Six Nations of the Grand River would get a third, if not more. 50% would be nice, right? I tell you where that came up. I go to a restaurant in Brantford and it has on there Justin's tax and Ford's tax on my bill for my meal. I don't see anything for Six Nations, but it's on our territory.
Mhm.
Would you support something like that, a new tax scheme for Six Nations of the Grand River into perpetuity?
Yeah, thank you, Amos. And I'm curious as to where you had your lunch or breakfast there to see that tax there. Again, working nation to nation is hearing what you're saying here and making sure that you're represented. So what I heard is you're not properly represented in how we're breaking down the taxes, and that definitely needs to be changed. And a tax reform would definitely be in order. So thank you, Amos. Yeah, thank you.
Cynthia?
Mine's just quick and again directed at everyone. I just wanted to add to Audrey's list over there. I think I heard someone say that we need to be stakeholders. We are rights holders. Thanks.
Mhm. Thank you, Cynthia.
Any other questions? So I have one. So as the most populous First Nations, Six Nations is often penalized by outdated federal funding formulas that do not reflect our population or complex needs. How will you advocate for fair and equitable funding for Six Nations?
Yeah, thank you. You need to be heard and you need to be understood when it comes to our federal government. So it's my duty to represent you when I go to Ottawa. It's not Ottawa's decisions, and it's also when we talk about provincially, it's not Queen Park's decisions. It's making sure that you guys are heard. So we need to make sure that that's understood and that we can bring more economic revenue to Six Nations. So yes.
Alrighty. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to number 6, Independent, Mike Clancy. Linda, can you hand those out for us? Thank you.
So, as I said when I first came in.
You have to use the mic.
So, I might.
Can you push the button?
Or not loudly
There you
enough.
go.
And, okay,
So I'm grateful to Chief Sherry Lynn Hill and Six Nations Council for the invitation to meet on your lands of the Haudenosaunee Confederation. I'm grateful that you saved Canada from the American Empire in 1776 and 1812. And I'm grateful that your ancestors sent money to feed my ancestors when the English Empire starved and made millions of Irish homeless and called it a famine. As a child, I was taught a mature democracy genuinely cares. So I got work, when I escaped poverty, I got work in employment counseling, and I enjoyed helping people escape poverty. I worked for the federal government and the provincial government for liberals and conservatives. I was appointed a women's employment coordinator in the North because the job was, men were too violent. They wouldn't allow women to do that job without being threatened and injured. And then I wound up doing community economic development for Treaty 3 and Treaty 9 because the First Nations, Indigenous, the people that, Métis people that were doing that work in our office, they were humiliated. Even the chiefs were humiliated when they came in. They were treated really badly. And and then I was put in that situation of taking over that job. And what I learned was that under Creighton, what happened was that we were told to deliberately withhold 10% of what the contract needed for that nursing station or for that water treatment or whatever, to force that people into using some other budget so we could then say they weren't properly managing their funds. And in our office, what happened was in order to exert extortion on the First Nations, what they did was they held back the contracts for a nursing station or whatever for a year or more, even though they knew that the need was there, because this is a way to exert force and control over that First Nation so that the friends of the Liberal Party would then be able to have contracts with them for logging or for mines or whatever. So, and then I wound up speaking about this because my loyalty, I swore an oath to the people, not to the party and not to the government. Okay, so Shania Twain and Lawrence Martin and other people introduced me to people of Six Nations. I'm sorry, Treaty 3 and Treaty 9, and I wound up losing that job partly because I reported that the RCMP were actively trafficking women and girls and boys from the North who wanted to escape their communities. They wanted to have a better life, and they were being trafficked west to Winnipeg and east to Thunder Bay, onto the ships on the Great Lakes, and also to the fishing lodges and the camps of the American corporations like 3M. Okay. And that the Kenora police themselves ran a house of prostitution on the main street of Kenora. So, and I publicly accuse the Liberals and Conservatives of sadistic character, both in their treatment of First Nations and their treatment of working class people in the communities, because we have a lot in common. I hope I'm not talking too fast. But right now in 2025, the people of Brantford, Six Nations, and the Mississaugas have a lot in common. Our health, poverty, and housing emergency is directly linked as a community, and it's directly caused by Brantford's politicians, both Larry here, Booma, and the City Council. Because Brantford politicians created a housing crisis. They brought thousands of foreign workers and students into Brantford without first building housing. And when I talk to the women in Brantford, mostly First Nations women, they know that this is the case. And they describe these people. They describe Brantford's politicians as sadistic monsters, okay, as deliberately doing these things. They're aware of it. They know this is happening. So they said it's deliberate, sadistic cruelty, and this makes our lives hell. So they created a pressure cooker of abuse. Women told me they are forced to choose between assault at home or assault on the street, or assault in shelters or in a tent. And so their mothers came to me and told me that this is what's happening. Women are being assaulted in the shelter, sexually assaulted in the shelter that's run by the city of Brantford. Okay. So the For women who are white in Brantford, your age, you might live to be 85. But a young woman who runs away or who is homeless or is couch surfing will probably only live to be 34, according to the the women's advocates
Okay,
in
that's 5
Brantford.
minutes. Okay, any questions? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. Yeah, you were talking about economic development, now you're talking about homeless situation, the drug situation in Brantford. So what is your answer? Because there is a lot of First Nations homeless, they get attracted to Brantford. As you know, there's an
Of course.
increase more and more every year. So what is your answer to address that problem?
Well, there's a few. Okay, one is that that's where their extended families are. Okay, so that's naturally where they're going to go as the nearest center. If you if the water situation is solved or the housing situation is solved in Brantford, I mean on Six Nations, a lot of those people will come back. I've talked to those people. They're not garbage. They're not throwaways. Okay, they're even people who are in their 60s or 70s, okay, who happen to be evicted, wind up on the street or living in their cars, okay, and then being denied entry to it. I worked for Roberta Jameson at Ombudsman Ontario, and one of the skills I learned was that you can do things outside your jurisdiction. Okay, so Larry's wrong about that. Okay, you're not limited to just doing that. And the NDP candidate is right that Jagmeet Singh has forced the Liberal government to go into provincial jurisdiction to do uh, dental care and pharmacare. You have to understand that when they say that when they tie their own hands, that's what they're doing. Okay, they don't really have that limitation on ability. So when I worked for Roberta Jameson, what we did was we created a public situation in which we gathered information. We gathered information about similar cases. We invited people to talk, and then we create a backlash against the people who are trying to prevent them from getting things. So the power of a politician is how popular is. If you can make them unpopular, you have to hurt them. Okay, outside of this community, with the larger community, if you're not prepared to hurt them, if you're not prepared to withdraw power from them, they're not going to care about you. Okay, so that's what you do. You draw enough votes away from them to the smaller parties, so that they need to compete for your attention. So that's one way. Another way is to actually do your studies. Okay, so what I saw was that in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, that is very thorough. Okay, the statistics in that, the research, okay, it is very hard to argue with it. And so when you do go to court, you have a basis of getting a judgment that has some teeth to it. So that's another part. It's been a long time since I've done these things. So
Go ahead, Amos.
Okay, one of my other aspirations for this community is going after lost income from 1784, when our treaty first got us here. So would you advocate for us
of course.
in that be one of the remedies or set-asides that we would, with all of our computations, whether it's compound interest daily, that we would receive that kind of funding of lost income from 1784 to the present? Would you advocate with that with your folks?
I was never a lawyer.
It's going to be worth the billions. You know that.
Yeah, I was never a lawyer, but I was a paralegal, and I did study some law. There are precedents. If you look for the precedents, then you'll be able to find something. The other thing is that and that's what, I'm trying to think of her name. Okay, but the thing is that when the properties were taken from Six Nations, it was done by fraud. That's a historic fact. I find that when I talk to people from Six Nations, they don't know that their land in Brantford and this whole area was stolen by fraud. Okay, so again, that's a device that you can use to get a moral argument against the government. The government tries to pretend, the liberals and conservatives try to pretend to be morally just. That is a device that you can use to try to get something from them. The thing is that Trump is using the idea of a debt to get leverage over Canada. He's saying, you owe me this money. Okay, he just makes the bald statement. When Tecumseh's people were forced out of America, the Americans used the idea of a debt to do that. The debt doesn't expire. Okay, but as long as you are able to stand up for it. Okay, so my aunt Pauline Jameson was an Oneida from the Thames, and she said, "We have not always lived here, but this is the earth and air and water we are made of. This is where we stand. This is where our parents are buried. They're in this soil. So if we stand, and you stand strongly, and you stand united, then you can make an argument that that is hard for them to disagree with. Use whatever wedge you can. Do you remember what was the name of the member of Parliament who sat in Parliament in Ottawa with a feather?
Harper.
Right.
Manitoba.
Fantastic. And he was an NDP member.
Yes.
Okay, so that is the way to think. Take power away from them, embarrass them, force them to admit that what they're doing is wrong, and then use the law and whatever precedents you can find to go. Ms. Blackstock has done that, okay? And she's done it very effectively.
Okay.
Have I worn you out?
Any other questions? Nope, I don't see any. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
It's very generous of you.
Yep. Okay, let's go to number 7. Independent Chloe Marie? Chloe Marie. Oh. That was close. Welcome.
Thank you for your time. Is it working?
Yep, can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Hi there, my name is Chloe Marie. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm grateful to be here at the Six Nations of Grand River 59th elected band council meeting. 59th elected council meeting, sorry. I'm also grateful to be here along the Grand River, the many trails which grace the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Attawandaron, or neutral peoples. Despite the Haldeman Deed of 1984 giving legal land claims rights to Six Nations on both sides of the Grand River, the Haudenosaunee Confederation of Six Nations of Seneca, Cayuga, Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, and Tuscarora have yet to see land justice, as politicians continue to ignore chiefs' declarations to end unconsulted land development along the Grand River. To see these issues is one thing, but to truly acknowledge the land, its history, and its peoples, we have to act. Get involved with local Indigenous organizations like the Woodland Cultural Center, and get involved also by supporting Indigenous art, educating others around us. And most importantly, last but not least, staying hopeful that change is possible. Thank you for having me as a guest. My name is Chloe Marie. I go by they, them pronouns. I am a Brantford community member and activist. I'm struggling with chronic health conditions. And I also have a history of struggling with poverty, homelessness, gender discrimination in healthcare and the legal system, public transportation sucking, and generally just feeling like me and people in my life can't get ahead. I enjoy helping out at community gardens, community centers, events, and local charities, helping the unhoused community. I'm almost done my undergrad in law, human rights, and Indigenous studies. And all of this time in school has taught me that change is possible, but it requires some revolutionary thinking. And so I'm here running as an independent. But my platform is inspired by the grassroots organization, the Revolution Party, which is not currently a registered political party, but is a grassroots organization with the intentions on registering and running in the next election. So if it sounds like I'm missing a part of the platform, it just might not have made it into this speech. And definitely check out the website, because that is the organization where all of these ideas are coming from. And so the first part of the platform, food and shelter as a human right, let's do it already. We can work towards this by nationalizing food banks, housing reforms, instituting a universal basic income, meaning universal for everyone, sustaining the environment, and respecting Indigenous lands. And so, yeah, food and shelter is the first priority. I know, what a dreamer. But it is possible. Nationalizing food banks has been very effective in countries like Japan. It's great to have core food storage facilities so that food can be redistributed from core storage facilities to where it's needed most. And then a complementary piece of getting food to people is demonopolizing the agricultural industry, focusing less on corporate and more on family farms and government-owned operations offers possibilities for more and better jobs for Canadians, and especially for migrant temporary workers. Similarly, me and everybody that's part of the Revolution Party, we would like to work on demonopolizing and socializing housing at the federal level by creating more streams of access for housing and home ownership through government-owned corporations that can actually be held accountable to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Sustaining the environment, which is a part of food and shelter for us, it has a lot to do with Indigenous lands. Our position is firm that we need to respect moratoriums issued by Indigenous peoples. If, like it has been said that we should not build there, then we should not build there. And that all new fossil fuel projects must be stopped immediately, including the proposed Prince Rupert gas transmission and the second phase of the Coastal GasLink, which have been rejected by people since their conception. And although these pipelines have economic benefits, they are costly to the taxpayer. In addition to the expensive RCMP interventions and militarization of RCMP against Indigenous resistance. I speak a lot more to this on the Revolution Party's Reddit page, and so if you're more interested on my position on, or the party's position on ending fossil fuel proliferation, there is information about that online.
Okay, that's 5 minutes.
Thank you, so sorry.
Okay, all right. Questions? Go ahead, Audrey.
Welcome. So Marie, I'm just concerned about your title of your party.
Yeah.
Revolution is really a negative connotation to it.
That's
So
understandable.
is there a better word or something that can be
Yeah.
hooked to that to make it, you want to join?
Yeah, could I?
But revolution, I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
negative.
I completely understand. And so that's how dissatisfied we are with the status quo, is that the changes, so at the end, I didn't make it there, but the last thing I was going to say was food and shelter shouldn't be revolutionary. We've actually had a lot of comments, we should be called the not revolutionary party. Because the idea is that for some reason, food and shelter is insane to ask for. And that's why we have tried to position ourselves as being radicalists, even though we're actually just asking for fundamental human rights, if that makes any sense.
Well,
okay.
It's still negative.
That's understandable. I did not do the best pitch.
Yeah, the pitch is not working for me.
That's fair.
So if it doesn't work for me, it's not going to work for a lot of people. So I guess my question underlying that is, to what extent would your party go to getting what you want if you're a revolutionary party?
Well, the changes that we are proposing, from the universal basic income to the ending of fossil fuel proliferation, these are revolutionary, as in other parties dare not say these words. So these are kind of radical ideas that we don't see represented in government as much, like universal basic income being called out by name, or our Green candidate did mention self-government specifically by name, but trying to have policies that they shouldn't be radical, but like, for example, trans healthcare, that's radical. But like, does it have to be? Like, but for some people, they unfortunately see it that way. And so that's why we've chosen that framing.
Okay.
Although, thank you for the feedback.
Yep. Go ahead, Dale, then Amos.
Hello. Mine's more of a comment, and it's mostly for all the candidates. You know, you guys are running for a party that's going to run this country called Canada. You know, and historically, and I know it's been mentioned by a few of the councillors here that what happened with through the, I guess, Canada being Canada because of the Iroquois people. So specifically, and I know Councillor Fraser and Cynthia talked about it in regards to the Holoman track and our land claim. And that's, I guess, one thing whoever gets into power is to realize, you know, what Six Nations isn't asking for is out to lunch, for lack of better words. But what we want is for, you know, historically for the government to live up to their word, what they promised our people, what we would have in the Holoman deed. And we're not even close. So that's what we want. And yes, the court case has been there since 95. That's a long, long time. And I know Six Nations doesn't want to bankrupt Canada. We want to work together in regards to global solutions for our people. And I know when governments change, I know one of the things is the impact of the bureaucrats that work for the governments. I think they need to be refreshed and reminded of who we are as a people, who we are as Six Nations. You know, Canada exists because historically because of Six Nations. So to be mindful of that, all we want through our court case is one, to be respected, and for the governments to live up to their word that their forefathers, I guess, made. And that's all we want. We want what's right for our people. And in saying that, you know, for all the First Nations all across Canada, because you're going to be representing Canada and all the First Nations, they need to be respected as well for all their treaties and lands. So, you know, we're not third world people here that you can talk down to. We are well educated. We got a lot of well educated people here. I mean, we're not going away. We're still here. You know, 500 years since you guys have come here, we're still here too. So that's all we're doing is for whatever government gets into power, you know, live up to your word. And let's look at what our court case is. And I mean, all the evidence in our case comes right from you guys. So let's respect that and let's live up to your word. Thank you.
Amos?
Yeah, just following on my colleague's words there. Thank you for coming. And I think we have to remember that we were here 73 years before Canada even became a country, and even more so before the province of Ontario was here. I just want to add on to those words for your history. With your group, I'm really interested in the technology of geothermal energy. Have you been talking about that? Because I know Alberta is starting to experiment with that, and I know there's a lot going on in Bavaria right now. It'd be amazing if Canada could get behind that,
So,
geothermal.
yes.
Have you been looking?
So, yes, that's a big part of our because we're so like we will not budge on the ending fossil fuel right now, like right now, like yesterday. It's really important that we look into alternative energy sources. And so, unfortunately, I have a friend, I have like a partner in the group that does the geothermal, and I'm the nuclear expert. So I'm actually I'm less versed on the geothermal, but those are geothermal and nuclear are the ones that we are like supporting more so. And then like anything that isn't fossil fuel, like and on indigenous lands, those are like two no-nos. Either one of those makes it a no-no.
Greg?
Yes, exactly to both my colleagues' point about green energy. You know, we are I guess, Canada's example of success in First Nations partnerships with green energy. But we are finding that we have some restrictions. And that because our territory, including the Nanfan of 1701, is quite extensive. Now, we are actually being looked, sometimes as the second First Nation to be consulted. when we were here, okay, long before all of the other nations had come into play. So are you willing to support us as we seek more green energy projects? In the Nanfan Treaty area is quite large of 1701. And that's what we can consider our traditional lands. So would you be willing to support our efforts in seeking more green energy projects?
I think partnerships like that would be invaluable and priceless. And especially if we could manage them as partnerships where the federal government could support Six Nations to have these like locations and benefit off of them rather than them just being like government owned on reservation territory. It would be really nice to have perhaps partnership, but more like having the government support and then gifting that to the community, I would say, would be more so the framework that would be more appropriate given the history, I would say.
Okay, that's time.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. I just have a question. Independent, is there Nicholas here? I just got a message that there was another one, but I guess he's not here. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight and sharing. Okay, let's move on, council. Let's go to number 6, adoption of general council minutes of April 8th. Moved by Cynthia, second by Carrie. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Let's go to Chief's updates. And again, sorry I wasn't feeling well last Tuesday I was here. So let's do the by-council meeting with Brant County. That was on April 16th. We met at the Chiefswood Upper Pavilion. The goal of the meeting with the County of Brant is building allies and better relationships with our neighbors and to explore ways in which we may work together for mutual benefits. The JTBA Executive Committee meeting also was on April 16th. I was just an observer. I learned that the effective April 11th, 2025, American Indians born in Canada with 50% blood quantum are exempt from the Department of Homeland Security rules that requires registration and fingerprinting requirements for Canadians traveling, staying in the U.S. for more than 30 days. So again, we are exempt from that. And if you require a blood quantum letter, please contact Lands and Membership at 519-445-4613. Also, the Hardy Indian Hospitals class action. Again, this settlement has not been settled or reached yet, but we just want to keep you updated that the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs announced that a proposed settlement has been reached in the Indian Hospitals class action. To be eligible for compensation, you must have been a patient at one of the 35 federal Indian hospitals while they were operated by the Government of Canada. Lady Wellington is on the list of the federal Indian hospitals included in the settlement agreement with operating dates of January 1936 to September 1968. So Six Nations members may be eligible for class action. The proposed settlement is not yet available. If approved, compensation and other benefits will be available to eligible class members. So again, we'll keep you updated on that. Yep.
Just on that lady is it Wellington or Wellington? I think it's Den, right? D-O-N. Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Wellington.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to council training on April 3rd and 4th. Available counselors and myself participated in 2-day full day training sessions hosted by Ganukrishra. Day 1 on April 3rd was lateral violence is family violence, And day 2 on April 4th was a refresher on power and privilege, a new version of training that was provided previously during our orientation. Yeah. Update on second generation cutoff information session presentation and follow up to councillors' request to invite Indigenous Service Canada to conduct an in-depth presentation on the topics of the second generation cutoff and section 10 voting threshold. The Chief's office has reached out to second generation cutoff engagement team to express interest for a community information session at Six Nations. ISK representatives informed us that Six Nations interest is noted, and once the federal caretaker convention period is over, they will follow up with us. Measles update. There's an outbreak on measles in our area. On March 20th, Grand Erie Public Health reported 111 cases of the measles. Measles is highly infectious, so it's important to protect yourself, family, friends, and public by isolating yourself. Please do not attend public events or places such as schools or workplaces. If you have any of the following symptoms, please self-isolate and contact your healthcare provider or the Schweigen Public Health. High fever, cough, runny nose, red or watering eyes, small white spots inside the mouth, or red blotchy rash. Measles symptoms can develop from 1 to 3 weeks after exposure, so please monitor for these symptoms and call public health if you are unsure. Again, I continue to meet regularly with community members. I wish to thank community members for bringing your concerns to me. The most pressing issue being brought to my attention by the community continues to be illegal dumping. We have scheduled a multi-stakeholder meeting to discuss illegal dumping. And as a reminder, if you see or suspect any trucks dumping waste in our community, please call Six Nations Police or my office. Immediately report the location, the company name, or license plate. I was invited to the 2025 Juno Awards in British Columbia by Hamilton Mayor Andrea Horwath. I attended to support the announcement of the city of Hamilton will host next year's Juno Awards. Since Hamilton is on our treaty territory, my itinerary was quite busy, but it provided a lot of insights into how we may want to showcase Six Nations history and local talent at the 2026 Juno Awards in Hamilton. My office has already received multiple inquiries from members in the music industry wanting to help sit on the planning committee. So that's exciting. And I think that's it. Yeah. That is it. Can I have a mover to accept my report as information? Moved by Greg, second by Melba. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none? Carried. Let's go to number 8. Hydro 1. Recommendation that Six Nations of the Grand River 59th Elected Council approve Hydro 1's request for the installation of 6 new poles. 3 are located near 2013 Tuscarora Road, and 2 are located near at intersection of Chiefswood Road and First Line, Mississauga Road. This is part of the upcoming work for system reliability and load management. Poles to be installed within the right-of-way. New primary wire to be installed crossing Chiefswood Road and Mississauga Road to meet up with the existing Hydro 1 owned circuit. Is there a mover? Moved by Audrey. Is there a seconder? Second by Dale with a comment.
Yeah, my comment, I guess, is more not so much the resolution, but about these ongoing meetings. Is it usually the second Wednesday of the month that you have these meetings? First Wednesday? Okay. No, I was getting confused thinking I was with the community meeting time. So, no, because I'd like to start attending those meetings because I know there's a lot of issues with hydro. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Waive second reading. Moved by Audrey, second by Dale. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Let's go to 9.1, Lands and Resource, Wealth and Economy Committee. The meeting date was April 8th. Is there update?
We had a meeting this morning, but it's too early to give the results of that meeting. But we did have a meeting on that day, and I asked, I said, Natasha, that's our secretary. She didn't have the minutes done yet, so I will table that till the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay, Cynthia?
Yep.
My co-chair.
Let's go to number 2, Community Committee. The meeting date was Wednesday, April 9th. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Chief. So I can give a really brief update to the meeting we had. A couple of delegations. One of the ones we did have was with the powwow committee. More information. We'll be having continual meetings with them and the upcoming powwow. This one here is going to be hosted at the Speedway once again. And it's going to be the 46th anniversary of the powwow. 100% volunteer committee since its inception. Now, let's see here. So we'll continue to have meetings with them moving forward, and more information will be coming to council regarding what is going to result out of those. Next thing we want to quickly discuss here is going to be the animal wellness. So animal wellness, those are going to be coming to the Parks and Recreation facility during the months of April and May this year. So keep an eye out on the social medias for those community members for the times. And the last thing we want to quickly, let's see here, make a note of is just the community awareness coming up as well. So the itineraries are available if you haven't already received your booklet, but also keep an eye on our social media as well for the various events that will be happening throughout the community. So thank you very much.
Okay. Can I have a mover to accept as information? Moved by Dale, second by Cynthia. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Let's go to number 3, Unity Building, External Government Relations and Justice Committee. Meeting date, April 9th. Good, Greg?
Great, thank you, Chief. Yes, the AFN is going to be hosting the 3rd Indigenous Laws Gathering, June 3rd and 4th at the Casino-Rama. And it's the opportunity for representatives from Six Nations to attend and learn from our knowledge keepers and a lot of some other legal experts. And they're going to be looking at strategies to actually revitalize our laws and some of our legal orders. I know that I believe Melba, Leslie, and maybe Cynthia may be attending that gathering. That's on June 3rd, starting June 3rd in the Casino-Rama. The next announcement I'd like to have, as you know, Justice has been working on the bylaw for the waste management, and the concerns for the community. And of course, they are near the final draft, and that will be reviewed by council. And of course, there was some good words today concerning about some of additions that might have to be included into a bylaw, including, of course, the half-load season. And of course, there was always questions about enforcement and prosecution. And as you know, later on, there is money available that will allow a law firm to possibly prosecute. So that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Is there a mover to accept report? Moved by Carrie, second by Dean. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Let's go to number 4, Built Environment and Climate Adaptation, Lands and Membership Committee. Meeting date was April 10th. Go ahead, Dale.
Long-winded title. A few issues I know in our lands membership. I know council did approve the set-aside policy, and the staff now are finalizing the procedural thing. And it's always been there. It's just that they're making it a little more refined to ensure that I guess the lands membership office is contacted. One of the first steps, I guess, to contact their office in regards to that process. And the set-aside primarily deals with any of land that is under the, I guess, stewardship of the elected council. So, and more times than any, it's our internal, I guess, departments that are looking for set aside land when they have funding available for capital projects. So just to follow that process so that everything can get documented. and stay on file and record. And I guess that anything that goes with that, and I know from some of the other departments, I know they're getting into, I guess, accessing the capital dollars and funding to ensure, I guess, that process is followed internally as well through the various departments that exist, so that the process can be ensured that it's followed with the land set aside and it can be properly documented in regards to what is actually required. And some of the process and procedures that the manager, Lori, has set aside is if, if there's, council has 50 acres and maybe only 10 is required, and to follow that process, set it aside and separate it. So just some steps to follow. The other thing I know with Public Works, I know they're planning on it resurfacing 3 sections this year, and I can't remember all the sections that he had mentioned when we were at the committee. The only one I do remember is 4th line east of Cuga Road to the tracks will be done this year, and I think there's 2 other sections of road that will be done resurfacing. And I've asked them to looking at some other roads as well to see what I guess that are of urgent need with a lot of the potholes and stuff. So they're putting some costs together in relation to resurfacing those roads, and so that we can maybe look at accessing some funds that may come available, and as well as with the environment, because we have a few environmental issues that we want to look at with the natural gas wells. And I think in our next meeting, we want to discuss, invite natural gas, because I guess they have some historical issues that they dealt with on the province in regards to the natural gas wells. So maybe we can, I guess, get on the same bandwagon and see what we can do to help resolve some of these issues that are prevalent on Six Nations in regards to the natural gas wells. And I know, I think last month I had sent out a list that Derek had updated. Not much change to that list, but he just keeps us updated and puts it out to us. So I didn't put it out this month because there wasn't much change on that list at this time. But he's the other avenue when you got projects to ensure that Derek is well informed on any of those capital projects. So I don't know if there's any other comments from any of our committee members want to comment on anything that happened at our last meeting. Seeing none, that's it, Chief. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a mover to accept his information? Moved by Audrey, second by Carrie, with a question.
Yeah, Dale, are you saying that programs have to have the money in place before they can ask for land to be set aside? The second question is, have Cuga Road and 5th line from Seneca Road and 5th line from Seneca Road down to 4th line been put on as priority, because it's a good way to ruin your car by going down those roads?
Answering the second one first is in relation to the roads. Mike and his crew were going out and they were going to look at priority roads to what needed to be done outside of the other 3. And then hopefully we can bring it here and see what kind of funding is available to do those roads, because I know with the freezing and the thawing did create havoc on the roads this year. So I know we talked earlier about the heavy trucks on the road. Yes, they do cause damage, but I think the greater damage is caused by the freezing and thawing. And I think some of the ongoing projects is to ensure that the proper drainage is going. So I mean, that's an issue that we can look at with Public Works as well, to help alleviate some of those issues, to make sure that the water gets away from getting underneath the road surface and causing that damage. In regards to the set aside policy, usually if they're looking for land that council has in their possession and they want to utilize some of it, and more times than any, when I guess any particular department has a project, then yeah, usually they got their funding to initiate their project. But if they need to initiate it through that process to start their project, then I don't think I think it was a must to have the money because they're not buying the land. The land is just being set aside for the use of whatever community project that they're going to be initiating or service they want to create on Six Nations. So it's just a matter of ensuring that the project is well aware of what their needs are in relation to the facility they want to create, the amount of service that they're going to need in regards to the infrastructure, and the amount of land that is going to be available for the type or the size of facility that they're looking for. And that's just, I guess, because when they created the new forms, those are some of the questions that are on that in relation to what their needs are.
You know,
Yep, Carrie.
Yeah, I think one of the roads of the three is Seneca from second to first, I think. Is that a bad road?
Both of them are,
Yeah.
as signs I'm saying, rough road.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Hazel.
back, back to Dale. What is the process if a farmer wants to rent ban lands? Who do they go to?
Okay, just before that, I got a motion on the floor.
Oh, sorry.
So moved by Audrey, second by Carrie. All in favor? Anybody opposed? See none, carried. Go ahead. Yep.
Getting to your question, I know that's kind of a separate process from the set aside policy
Yeah, I
because
know,
it was
yeah.
kind of an internal policy that was looked at through central administration. I know when I worked here, I kind of looked after it. So after I left, I'm not sure where that landed. I know it might have been at Public Works for a little while, but then I don't know if it got shifted back to the central administration through the 58th Council. But it's a kind of a separate process in relation to the set aside policy. And I know there is farmers that have existing leases now, and to be honest, probably a majority of them have all expired. So I know we probably have to, I guess, put some life back into that and see where it is in relation to where all the leases are. I know a while back when Ben Jetton was still at Blake's, we had created a new lease, and it was being, I don't know if it was given some input from some of the farmers, but I don't think it went too far after that because I think shortly after that, that's when I kind of retired and I don't know where what happened to it.
Follow-ups.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that does need a process developed if there isn't one, because people are asking, and none of us really know where there are ban lands that can be rented for farming purposes. And another question I have is if an existing farmer decides to stop farming and they already have a lease, can they sublease that to somebody else? It would have to come back here, right?
Yeah, no subleasing is allowed in those initial leases that people originally signed. And I think even in the new version that was created, there was going to be no subleasing because it would have to still require council's approval.
But see, all of that signed leases, whenever they happen, have never been maintained. So there's not even right now a system that we can look at.
There are leases that were created and were signed, and I know some of them did have that clause in them that they would roll over, but I mean, they expire every year and nothing's done in the 30 days, they roll over. But that's why I say we need to breathe some life back into that to initiate that process and
Will
look
that
at
be
all.
in our committee?
It probably could, but I mean, it's a central administration thing, so I don't know if it's gonna end up at our committee. We can do that in relation to, I know I probably have a lot of knowledge in relation to what happened, but I know a lot of the records did go missing. So that's another issue.
Okay. All right, so number 10, motion to adjourn, to go to in camera. Is there a mover? Moved by Carrie, second by Hazel. All in favor? By opposed? See none, carried. Thank you for joining us tonight and have a great night.